Hello and welcome. I'm Kenzie.
And I'm Carly, and this is Ask a Therapist.
Each week, we explore life's most relatable questions, from relationships and boundaries to burnout and self-worth, all through a therapist's lens.
We're licensed therapists, but this isn't therapy. It's a place for insight, reflection, and a little humor along the way.
Your questions,
our insights.
Ask a Therapist. This podcast is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. The content shared should not be considered a substitute for professional mental health care, diagnosis, or treatment. We strongly encourage listeners to seek help from a licensed mental health professional for any personal or psychological concerns.
Any advice or commentary offered is based solely on the information provided. As such, we cannot guarantee any specific outcomes, and the feedback given should not be interpreted as professional mental health advice. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, please call 911, 988, or 211.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Ask a Therapist. This is episode 32. This week, we hear from a listener who is wondering when and how they should know if they are ready to get married. We want to share a quick reminder that while our questions are specific to listener submissions, the insight and responses we share are meant to be supportive and applicable to anyone who may be listening. We're excited to explore this with you all, so let's get started. Carly, hi, welcome back.
Hi.
I believe that you have our therapist tip of the week, so I am excited to hear about what you have for our listeners or other therapists who may be listening to this.
Okay. Yeah, my tip, it might, I don't want to say upset people a little bit, but people may not really like my tip, but I'm going to share it because I think it's an important one that that applies to myself.
Yeah.
But my tip is don't use your therapy time to talk about or focus on other people.
Oh.
Use it for yourself.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you the number of times that I've sat down with a client and they have used the entire 50 minutes, sometimes 60 minutes, sometimes a little bit over, to just vent about how frustrated they are about what someone else is doing.
Yeah.
And I get it. I really do get it, because sometimes people are just doing things that are causing us distress. And it's like we want to talk about it. We feel like we need to talk about it. And I also get that sometimes you want to explain things, like context does matter. And so you kind of want to give the story of what happened and, give the play-by-play. But where I think we lose a lot of opportunity when we make our therapy session all about someone else and their behavior, because they're not there. So you can talk about them the entire time, and there's nothing that the therapist can do to change that person, to make them shift their behavior. In some instances, we can try to understand it, but we can't even necessarily know the motivation behind it. So I would encourage people, even if it feels like a boss, a partner, your kid, your friend is doing something that is incredibly frustrating, irritating, whatever, try to keep the focus on yourself. Like the way you're responding to that, or what that brings up for you, or how you would like to be able to handle it differently. Because I think, unfortunately, sometimes what happens is it becomes about, whether the person realizes this or not, it becomes about defending why they can't do anything other than what they're doing because of what this person is doing.
Yeah.
And no matter what, whether you're responding, whether you're not responding, like that's still a response of some sort. And so if what you're really wanting to work on is yourself, focus on that in therapy. And that's a message to me as well. I don't know what you think about that, Kenzie, or if you can relate at all.
Of course. I love that. And I think that an easy shift for people, like you said, Carly, is if you notice, because it might be a big part of your life, right? Like your boss or your child or your significant other or whatever. Obviously, it's a big part of your life and stuff that's going on. And you're like, okay, I want to process this in therapy. But instead of being like, I don't understand that. Why do they do this way? To your point, kind of an easy shift is like, here's what comes up for me. Like, I notice that I respond in this way, or I get super frustrated or annoyed when they do X, Y, and Z, because that gives insight into yourself, how you handle it, why it's so hard for you, and then things that you can do kind of moving forward. But just to kind of add on to this, for any therapists that might be listening, if you notice a client doing this, how do you bring it up in the room? What's like a shift that you can make for your clients? I know that's something that I always say to clients is like, I know that this is super frustrating to hear, but like, I'm not sitting with them in therapy. And like, I can't tell, if they were sitting here with me, I would be having a much different conversation, but I'm sitting here with you. And the only person that you can control is you. And so I know that it feels unfair. I know that you want somebody else to change, but you only have control over yourself and your change. And so that's some ways that I'll kind of like bring it up. So I don't know if you have any tips, Carly, on what to do as a therapist in that situation, or kind of like, how do you interrupt if you notice this happening? Or if you notice it happening for like multiple sessions in a row, what is kind of your approach?
Yeah, great question. In the beginning, when I'm first joining with a client, I'm much more likely to let it go because it's still information, right? And it's helping me
Yes.
kind of understand their perspective.
Yeah.
But over time, you start to kind of realize like, okay, this is very heavily focused on a piece that we just don't have control over. So I've used similar language to what you're describing, which is like, unfortunately, that person is not here.
Yeah.
I've also used kind of the systemic language of any
Okay.
change to a system changes the system.
Yeah.
And so, like, in an effort to try to empower people to use the agency that they do have to make a change, because to your point, sometimes they very, very much want another person to change, but they don't have any say over that. And so they just feel disempowered and helpless. And so what I'm trying to say is no matter what, you doing something different does change the dynamic in one way or another. As long as you continue to participate in it in the way that you have, you contribute to the very cycle that you're so frustrated by. So you can't change their contribution, but you can change your own. And then inevitably that changes the dynamic because now that other person has to respond to something different from you, right? So I try to make the focus on empowering them to use the autonomy and the agency that they do have to enact some sort of change that hopefully shifts the dynamic one way.
Yeah. Love it. Great tip. That's a good one.
Awesome. Should we get to our letter?
Yes, I'm ready.
If you're looking for therapy that meets you where you are, we'd love to introduce you to Revive Center for Wellness. Revive is a therapy practice rooted in connection, curiosity, and care, with offices in Stamford and Norwalk, Connecticut, and Miami, Florida, plus virtual therapy for clients throughout Pennsylvania and Massachusetts. Our all-women team offers counseling for individuals, couples, and families with specialties including anxiety, depression, trauma, life transitions, and more. We accept insurance and believe meaningful change starts with feeling genuinely seen and heard. Whether you're searching for the right therapist or you're a fellow clinician seeking a collaborative, supportive environment, we'd love to connect. Visit Revive CFW, that's REVIVE CFW.com, and check us out on Instagram at Revive CFW to learn more. I do just want to say before we move on, Revive is how Kenzie and I met. It's run by Amy Albero, a clinical social worker, and they have some great clinicians there. I still work with some of the clinicians there in a supervisory role. And I cannot speak enough to just the environment that it is and how much it's contributed to my own growth and development as a clinician. So just want to add my little personal endorsement there for Revive. We love Revive.
Yeah, I'll follow up on that. It's a wonderful practice. They do such a great job with all of their clients, their clinicians. Like it's a very well-run organization. And I think that so many of the clients that are there just feel so held and feel so much support. So couldn't recommend it enough. Well, let's jump into our question. The listener this week says, "Dear Kenzie and Carly, I'm hoping you can help me figure this out. I'm thinking about proposing to my girlfriend of 4 years, but I'm not sure if I'm ready or how I'll know when I am. I met my girlfriend at one of my lowest points. I had just lost my job after dropping out of school, and I had no direction. Long story short, she helped me figure things out and supported me while I went back to school and basically restarted my life. I think our relationship is pretty healthy. We communicate well. We genuinely enjoy each other's company. We've gotten through some difficult times together, and I can honestly picture myself spending the rest of my life with her. Marriage seems like the next logical step, but I'm concerned about how unsure I feel, and I'm not sure if it's a red flag. It's not that I'm questioning her or the relationship, I'm questioning myself. I've never witnessed a healthy marriage up close. My parents divorced when I was young, and most of the married people I know seem miserable or like they're just staying out of obligation. I guess I worry I'll end up like them. When I bring this up to people, the advice is almost always when you know, you know. I understand what they're trying to say, but honestly, I don't know what that means. Am I supposed to have an aha moment and suddenly know for sure what to do? Because that's not happening for me. Instead, I feel excited, hopeful, and a little terrified all at the same time. Are there conversations every couple should have before getting engaged? Are there relationship habits or warning signs I should be paying attention to? Is there anything that should make me pump the brakes even if I love this person? How do you know you're ready to get married when you've never actually seen a healthy marriage up close? Carly, what are your thoughts?
Um, Such a good question. Like, and I just personally, I love doing premarital work. I actually haven't done it as frequently as I used to. And so I'm kind of like, hey, I need some more premarital clients. But it just makes me think about that stage where you're excited and you very much want to move forward, but also there's like just a lot of fear and a lot of uncertainty. To kind of jump back to our previous episode, or your tip from our previous episode, there's so much uncertainty. And I do understand people really, really wanting to like change that and have like some guarantees when you're taking as big of a risk as joining your life with someone. But there is uncertainty and risk that comes along with that. And so I just very much felt this person like wanting to do, I won't say the right thing, but like wanting to do the thing that's going to serve the relationship, but like wanting to know that he's ready, that like they're at a place where it makes sense to make that step, and really wanting like some professional guidance on like, what are the bounds that I should be looking for? What should I be asking? So I think the listener's asking great, great questions. And I also just want to clarify, one of the first things that jumped out to me was not this listener asked, or this listener was not asking, like, I don't know if this is the right person for me, or I don't know if she's the one, or that's not what they said. They're basically saying like, I don't know if I'm ready to be married, or I don't even know if I know how to be married in a healthy way, which I do think are two different fears. You know, I don't necessarily hear them questioning the person or the relationship, but more so if they're ready and essentially have what it takes to take it to the next step. So,
Yeah, I hear a lot of, I don't know what I don't know. Like, am I missing something in this question? And I think that when, this listener said, like, I've never witnessed a healthy marriage up close. My parents got divorced. A lot of times for people whose parents have gotten divorced, or where they haven't been able to witness healthy relationships up close, they want to know why. Like, you want that certainty. You want to be able to predict, like, okay, they were feeling this before they got married and that's why it didn't work out, or, X, Y, and Z happened. Like, I want to avoid that. And so I think that it makes so much sense that this listener would be like, am I missing something? I think that that's the biggest thing that comes up for me in this question, is kind of like, I feel like this is right, but I'm scared because I don't know if I'm missing something, or if there's something that all these other people have figured out that I just don't know about, maybe because I haven't been given that example growing up. And so that can be a really difficult place to sit in, of feeling like you can't necessarily trust yourself. Because what I hear in this question is, I feel hopeful, I feel excited, we have this really great relationship, but there's still this piece of me that just wants to make sure that I'm not missing something. And so learning to trust yourself, learning to trust your relationship, and knowing that there isn't something that you're missing here. There isn't something that you're not going to be able to, like, or there isn't something that you've missed in your life that's going to make this decision like harder for you. Nobody knows what's going to happen in their lifetime. Nobody has any certainty around relationships. But what you have shown is that in the past 4 years, you guys have been able to choose each other. You've been able to lift each other out of really low points in your life. It sounds like you've been able to communicate really well. These are all really good foundational tools to a relationship and to building a life together. And the excitement that you feel, that is a part of it. So trusting that just as much, and trying to challenge a little bit of that uncertainty. And, we can definitely talk to this listener's questions around like, all right, what are these conversations that we should be having? Like, are there habits or warning signs? Like, I think that those are all super fair questions, but I also just want to kind of reiterate that, like, that fear that you're feeling, it is a very understandable fear, but that doesn't mean that it's a fact.
yes, I agree. First of all, I think it is, while maybe well-intended, I think really unhelpful advice to say, when you know, you know. because we all kind of have varying degrees of trust in ourselves, confidence with certain things. And so, yeah, for some people, when they know, they know. For some people, it very much is a very clear decision and they feel very confident in it. But I think more realistically, there's typically not like this one moment where you're like, and now I know. It's typically a gradual build, right? Of like seeing how you all maybe navigate some of the challenges that you've described, or seeing how trust is built over time, or growing in your connection and building like intimacy and having experiences of showing up for each other in times of crisis. And kind of like over time, you start to develop more of that confidence and more of that certainty. But the goal, I don't know that the goal is to really be certain when you're getting married, because I don't know if you can. What you're deciding is that I'm going to navigate the uncertainty with this person. That's like essentially what you're deciding. So, because you don't know what you're going to get thrown your way, but what you're settling on is I want to make a commitment to do life with this person, or to build a life together with this person, despite the uncertainty that I may feel. The other thing that does stand out to me is marriage is a big decision. I know that people value marriage differently, get married for different reasons, but it is not a small thing to merge your life with someone. We're talking about finances. We're talking about potentially raising a family together. We're talking about merging their family with your family. And so these are pretty big decisions. And a part of me is like, some of that anxiety or concern is healthy, because it shows that you're not entering into this flippantly. You're not just like haphazardly saying like, I guess we'll do this now. Like there is a weight of responsibility that comes with a decision that's that big. And so part of me is like, it's good that you're taking the time to think about it, because hopefully that will encourage you to maybe take some steps to secure the relationship more, or to prepare for the future that you all want to build, because you're taking it seriously. So I just also want to point that out. Some of that concern may not necessarily be a red flag. It may be a sign that like, you recognize how serious of a decision it is, and you want to be thoughtful in how you go about it.
Yeah, I want to add on to what you said about like when and dealing with the uncertainty. I actually think that there can be some harm in being like, oh yeah, I know, like we're good. Like this is it. We're going to be together forever and that's it. And relying too much on that, because I think that sometimes people can be like, yep, this is my soulmate. We're going to be together forever. Forever is a long time, depending on when you get
like, let's check back in a few years, ma'am, sir.
Totally. I
Okay.
mean, there's like, you have decades together, and there's a lot of change and growth that happens with that. And so, yeah, of course it is scary. I think that it is better to be kind of like, how do we navigate this together, than kind of like, yeah, we're good and I'm going to get complacent, because then there's the potential for losing each other or drifting or not checking in. And I think that's something that, while you're not guaranteed certainty, something that you can, an approach that you can take to marriage is, this is an everyday choice. I'm choosing this person every day. Marriage isn't something that you get into and all of a sudden it's just like, okay, cool, we're good. Like foot off the brake. Now we're comfortable and we're in this. This is something that grows and evolves and changes over time. And there is so much beauty in being able to say, this is the person that I am choosing to navigate this with. And I know that we both are putting in a consistent, constant effort into this life that we're building together and into our relationship with each other. And so it's okay to kind of say like, people might fall back on like, when and it's just going to be like, great. But it's also okay to be like, you know what? I do know that I love this person so much, and I'm going to continue to work to create this life in this relationship that we both feel so happy and so safe in. So that's just adding on to what you said, Carly. And then, these questions that you were talking about, and that's like a really good thing to kind of bring up. I completely agree. And there's more to this, but their first question of, are there conversations every couple should have before getting engaged? I did a little bit of research, but the research, and this comes from the Gottmans too, but the biggest contributing factors to divorce are poor conflict management. So it's not whether you argue, but it's how you argue. So if there's criticism, defensiveness, contempt, stonewalling instead of repair, curiosity, or accountability. Growing apart emotionally. So people often say that they fell out of love, but what happened is they stopped investing in each other, in the friendship, in the relationship. So kind of what we were just talking about. Offering those small moments of connection, affection, and appreciation. Those are constant. Those are things that should be happening, in the everyday of your relationship. Financial stress. So, what are your values around money? Having conversations around like, how much do we feel comfortable spending without asking the other person? Or what do we want to be saving for? Or, what does financial stress look like to both of us? What does saving look like to both of us? Talking about that. Infidelity or broken trust. Communication problems, different expectations of marriage. So having conversations around like, what does marriage look like to both of us? What do we feel like our roles are in this marriage? How do we want to show up for each other? Unequal mental loads and household labor, intimacy issues. So talking about like, what does sex look like in our relationship? Are we getting our needs met? Are we getting even just like, it's not just sex, but are we getting physical affection or emotional intimacy? Are we feeling connected on those? Substance use or untreated mental health concerns, and then family and in-law boundaries. And this is something that actually does come up more often than you would probably think. It's not so much the in-laws themselves, but it is the boundaries that you place around the impact that your family might be having on your family. Like when you get married, you're creating your own family. That's your person. That's who you're choosing. And a lot of times people have a hard time separating and they choose their family of origin, or they don't respect their spouse's boundaries around that. And that can lead to a lot of frustration and contempt. So I would say having conversations around those areas and being on the same page and kind of like preparing for that is a good way of just kind of feeling like, okay, yeah, we're on the same page, or like, oh shoot, we're not. And these are some things that we should be talking about before we get married. I know that was a lot, but Carly.
No, you actually, you went in a very similar direction. Of course, I was going to pull from the Gottmans because anybody who's listened to the podcast a little bit has probably heard me mention them, but it's because they have the most extensive research that we have right now on relationships and couples and essentially what helps them to thrive and what are the commonalities amongst couples that, choose not to stay together. So there's just a lot there that I would definitely recommend to this because it's very insightful and we don't need to reinvent the wheel when we have some research or some understanding of like what's worked really well for other people and what hasn't. The main thing from that though that you mentioned that I just want to highlight a little bit further about it not being the presence of conflict, but how you manage the conflict. Yeah. So the Gottmans actually have this down to a science where they say that they can, that 69% of conflict within a relationship is perpetual, not solvable. And just what they mean by that is there's no simple solution or compromise that's going to like fix it. You know what I mean? Sometimes there are compromises that just work and you can kind of like meet in the middle. And there's some things where there is no middle. One person gets their way and one person doesn't. That can be things like, whether or not you want children or how many children you want or where you want to live, things of that nature where ultimately there is maybe some sort of compromise or sacrifice that one person is making for another. And so because, and 69% is a lot, that means that like there's a few problems you can solve, but most of them are going to continue to show up in your relationship, not just out of like actual decisions, but also things like one person being conflict avoidant and the other person being a little more like confrontational and wanting to have those conversations. Like that's not likely something that's going to change. And so that's something you're going to have to learn to manage within the marriage if you want it to not break the marriage down. And so I offer that frame because whatever challenges you all already have in the relationship, there's a good chance that those are going to continue to be the challenges. So the best thing that you can do is develop a plan for how you're going to manage those things that you already know are just a little bit hard. They usually stem from core differences, either in who you are or your sense of values that are not shifting. And so we can't just like maybe when we get married, she'll feel differently about this or he'll do this differently. They probably won't. And so you're better off developing a plan to deal with it rather than just hoping that it changes or hoping that you can wear them down, essentially. So,
Yeah.
healthy couples learn how to repair. They learn how to apologize, right? They learn how to communicate about difficult topics without attacking one another. They learn how to give empathy, right? They give the benefit of the doubt when they can. These are the qualities that you want to be developing because you don't know what you're going to encounter, but that is what will sustain you through hardship in a marriage. I'll pause there. Did you have something to add?
No, I love that insight. I love the research behind it and just kind of like, Carly, I know that this is absolutely your wheelhouse, so I'm excited to hear more of your thoughts. But I did want to say that I'm super happy that you brought up the kids thing, just because that's something that I was going to say too, of like, again, what conversation should we be having? I think that is a big one too, of kind of like just making sure that you're on the same page around, do you want kids? Like, what are your values? What are the things that you really want out of life? And are you guys aligned on those things? And of course, every relationship is going to have to come with some compromise. But, if your partner really wants kids and you really don't want kids, that's going to be a tough one to, I mean, you can't compromise on that. And so that is one that, like, if you can't be aligned on that and you think that you're going to end up resenting the person, or this is just like not the life that you want to live, as much as you love that person, really do have to kind of figure that out and have some conversations around that. Religion is another one. Like, if you feel like you have a certain faith that you want to practice or that you want to raise your kids in, and your partner has a different one or doesn't have any, these are all kind of like conversations that are important, I would say, to have before getting engaged. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that too. I'm thinking about, like, if you're like, oh, I really want to like travel, like, I want to live somewhere across the country, and your partner's like, no, I really want to be close to family. Like, these are other conversations, and there might be a little bit of room for compromise on that, but it really also just depends on what your values are and what's important to you and what you're willing to compromise on. And it can be tough. It can be heartbreaking to have those conversations if you feel like you're not able to get to that compromise, but you would much rather have those conversations now than be like, we'll figure it out down the road and end up feeling very resentful.
100%. What you just said was the reason that initially this was my area of specialization. And I always said, I love working with engaged or almost ready to be engaged couples because of the stage that they're in. And it's because most of the time they're really hopeful and excited and like want to make the relationship work. And so they're motivated to do the work.
Yeah.
But also it's before they've made that more serious commitment, because once you're in it, the stakes are a lot higher. Like, as painful as walking away right now would be, it only gets more painful once you're married, once you're sharing finances, once you've bought a home together, once you have children together. Like, you only become more and more like entangled in each other's lives. And so I'm with you 100%. These conversations are difficult at times, but they are so much better to have now than to wait. And I encourage you, take it a little bit beyond just the surface of like whether or not you want children or even how many children you want, because that's, an important starting point. But also, like, how do you want to raise your children? Is it important that they be raised in a certain way or in a certain religion, or that they, like, these are things that people care deeply about and feel very passionately about. And if we're not discussing those things early and often, because also feelings and opinions change, then you run the risk of just like kicking the can down the road to the point that by the time you get there, the stakes may be so much higher.
Yeah.
So I think some questions that the listener may want to ask are things like, can we solve problems together? Can we recover and repair after hurting each other or having an argument? Can we influence each other without trying to control each other? That's a huge thing. Feeling like your partner cares about the things that you bring to them, but also like no one wants to feel controlled. So how do you balance that where you value the other person's opinion without becoming enmeshed in a way where you're not able to make any of your own decisions together, right? Like that's a balance that you have to learn to strike. Can we support each other's growth and support each other's pursuit of their dreams? Do you even know what your partner's dreams are? And like, what role do you see yourself playing in supporting them in that? That's a huge one for the Gottmans is, they say that people need the freedom to pursue their dreams. And so like, what are your thoughts and feelings about the things that your partner maybe wants out of life? Can we stay connected during stress? Do we have difficult conversations without threatening the relationship? And do we have a shared vision for the life and future that we want to build? And I think that's a little bit of what you were getting at, even in terms of like location or closeness to family or the involvement of in-laws in the raising of our children. Like, do we have a similar vision? Because most often, whether it's spoken or not, we have some sort of expectation as to what marriage is going to be like, as to what our life is going to look like in the future. And we may assume that because we give like high level answers that like we're filling in the pixels the same. And sometimes we're not. Like we can be in agreement in theory, but then in practice, what does that actually look like? So I think having those more in-depth discussions about the how are important. And just to encourage the listener and to jump back to something you said earlier, a lot of what they described is positive. And it wasn't just like, I just love this person and they're just the greatest thing ever. It was like, no, we've dealt with some challenges together, right? Like we've gone through some hardship and we've supported each other. And so those are signs that like even more so than any sort of lightning bolt feeling that you might get of certainty, like this is evidence that you all have done this and can do it, which I think should boost your confidence to even approach some of these discussions.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you said like that is more meaningful. The experiences that you've actually had, the commitment that you've shown each other, being able to repair after, difficult conversations or things like that. That's your assurance more so than this like just honestly probably not even real like spark of lightning of this is it. It is okay to feel a little bit uncertain. I don't know that nobody can feel 100% certain. That doesn't mean that the relationship is wrong. That doesn't mean that it's a red flag. It means that you are taking this seriously.
Yeah. If I can just briefly touch on it seems like the next logical step piece, because I've heard people say that a lot and that always raises a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah.
Like getting married is not like something, well, I guess we just do because we're here now and like now is the moment where we do this.
Yeah.
I think you should enter marriage very deliberately, very intentionally, and not just because it seems like the next thing to do. Have a discussion about whether or not marriage is even something that you both want, that is important to each of you. It's not something you have to do. I don't know what this person's value system is or their religious background, but like, some people do it out of obligation in a way that really isn't necessary and they later discover doesn't even work for them or their belief system or the values that they actually live out. And so I would caution against the idea of like, I guess we're here, like, I guess we have to do it. No, you don't. Take your time.
Yep. Yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah.
Have these conversations. I would highly recommend premarital therapy, which is a little bit different than couples therapy, just because usually with couples, you're bringing like a particular problem or challenge that you want to work on. And with premarital, you are asking the therapist to kind of offer some guidance on things that you should look at or, should consider. So consider, doing that. Consider the Gottman's books. I probably have 3 or 4 back here that I can recommend. 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, 8 Dates. They even have one, What Makes Love Last. I think I have one over here that's like the hard questions you should ask before marriage. So I can throw those in the show notes, but there is a lot out there. There's also a program called Prepare Enrich that is designed to give you like an assessment on where your relationship stands and tell you where your strength areas are, what areas you may want to work on. And so there are resources out there to kind of help you with that.
Yeah.
I think all of the topics that you listed, Kenzie, were spot on. I had written down some of the same ones. It doesn't make sense to repeat them.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think just one other one that I would add there is talking about family patterns and like family of origin. That's another important piece. This person is mentioning, they come from a family of divorce. I'm sensing some concern about repeating those patterns.
Yeah.
Like talking about your experiences growing up, a lot of that shapes how we manage conflict, how we show affection, what we expect of other people. I know we've talked about attachment in the past. So having those conversations can be incredibly important as well.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I want to add on to that, I definitely hear some concern around I didn't experience a healthy relationship growing up, but just to highlight, like you can learn as much from something that didn't necessarily go well as you can from something that did go well. So there are a lot of people who come from families where maybe they didn't see a healthy relationship that learned, I don't want this. I want something different. And I am going to choose healthy communication. I choose loyalty. I'm going to choose putting my partner first because I learned what not to do. And so also just kind of like you don't have to have come from a family that had a perfect relationship in order to have that same experience yourself. I think that there can be a lot of learning that comes from, I didn't like growing up in this kind of environment. I want to do it differently with my family. And so just knowing that that's such a piece of learning as well. And it really does sound like this listener has taken from their experience, they want to do things differently. And that is 1,000,000% possible.
If this listener wants to let us know what they decide or send us a picture or something, if they decide to propose, I'll take it. That would be so exciting. But I do hope you found something helpful in what we offered today. If you'd like to hear our thoughts on a topic that matters to you, email your question to info@askatherapistpod.com. We'd also like to hear your thoughts on today's topic. What resonated, what didn't, and what did we miss? If you have advice for our listener, please share it. You may just hear your feedback on a future episode. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at askatherapist_pod. Emails and DMs are always welcome. Also, if you'd like to connect with me or Kenzie and learn more about the services we offer in our private practices, check the show notes for ways to reach us directly. With that, we're signing off. Thanks for listening. And remember, don't wing it. Just ask a therapist.
That's it for today's episode. We hope it gave you something to reflect on, or maybe even that aha moment.
If so, you know the drill. Rate, review, subscribe, and don't forget to text it to the group chat. Remember, sharing is caring.
If you have a question you want us to tackle, big or small, we want to hear it.
Email us at info@askatherapistpod.com or slide into our DMs on Instagram at askatherapist_pod.
You bring the questions.
We'll bring the insight and probably a metaphor or two.
This is Ask a Therapist.